The NBA season, it's going to be here before we know it. We're just 26 days. That's it. That separates us from that sweet, sweet joy of opening night in the NBA. Teams around the league, they're getting ready for the preseason to tip off. And teams that are playing internationally, they have already started training camp, including the Knicks. See Josh Hart there on the court with that brace on an injured finger as they get ready to open their season in Abu Dhabi, their preseason rather, against the 76ers. Joel Embiid, he's in the gym, but his status for those games and really for the season still up in the air. We hope to hear from him on Friday along with the rest of the Sixers for the first time since he had surgery back in April. So a lot of questions, right, surrounding the 76ers squad. It's a good thing we have the best in the business assembled to answer them. Bobby Marks, Tim Bontemps, I'm Malika Andrews. And Tim, by this time tomorrow, reporters, they should have met with Joel Embiid. We thought we were going to hear an update 6 weeks after surgery. It has been about 6 months. We have heard nothing. What do you want to hear him answer tomorrow?
I want to hear Joel Embiid tell us how he's feeling and what he expects to be able to do this season. That to me is not only the biggest question around the Philadelphia 76ers, it's arguably the biggest question in the entire Eastern Conference. As you talked about a lot yesterday, the East is wide open. And if Joel Embiid is able to be on the court, if Paul George is able to come back from this knee injury, they've got Tyrese Maxey, they've got Kelly Oubre, they've got VJ Edgecombe, the 3rd overall pick in this year's draft, Jared McCain, we'll talk about in a bit. Obviously, was going to look like he could be Rookie of the Year last year before he got hurt. They have a lot of talent on this team. They can compete with anybody in the East, but it all goes back to this guy right here, Joel Embiid, and can he get on the court, and can he look like the guy who a couple of years ago was going back and forth with Nikola Jokic for MVPs? If that happens, Philly's in business. And if that doesn't happen, the season's going to look a lot like last year. That's going to lead to a lot of questions about the future, not only of Joel Embiid, but of this Philadelphia 76ers team going forward.
So if anyone forgot how many games, as we say hello to our Brian Windhorst, Joel Embiid played last year, he only played in 19 games. That was his fewest since the 2015-16 seasons. This is a guy who averaged a point a minute in 2023-2024. Brian, what have you heard about how the 76ers are planning to manage Joel Embiid here?
Yeah, so I know that there's going to be a big focus of when Joel Embiid is going to be able to play. And I'm not sure that you're going to get a firm answer on that tomorrow or even in the near future. What I think the 76ers want is not so much about when he can start playing. It's about when he does begin playing, keeping him sustainably on the court.
Yeah.
Because he was never right last year. From the first moment of training camp, he was never right. He was fighting against that knee. It took him weeks just to figure out what to do about that injury before he had the surgery. So I know there's such a focus on when to see him out there. It's really a holistic approach. They're really trying to figure out how to keep him upright. And obviously, we also need to hear from Paul George, who had surgery in July, to see when his timetable might be. And I also want to point out, not to focus on the negative, they still have an unsigned key piece in Quentin Grimes, a restricted free agent who's been in a stalemate for months now. That is also unresolved.
And Paul George, Nick Nurse, and Daryl Morey, the GM of the team, will all speak tomorrow.
And Shams has said that Quentin Grimes, he may not even travel with the team on this upcoming international trip as they try to work out this contract here. I don't like this. I don't like that we've started this show in this segment, and I think if we had turned the word surgery into a drinking game, we'd all be drunk 5 minutes in. I don't like this, Bobby. So can you show us what it is the 76ers are actually dealing with, what they're looking at with their roster?
It's the forgotten team, right? Remember last year's offseason winner, the Philadelphia 76ers? They go out and sign Paul George. They draft Jared McCain here. This is the roster. When we look at it, when it's healthy, I think it can compete with New York and Cleveland in the Eastern Conference. Of course, the question regarding Joel Embiid and Paul George and Jared McCain coming back from that injury. Tyrese Maxey, of course, is back. Here's some of the big questions when we look at Philadelphia. Which Joel Embiid and Paul George will we see this year? Both guys certainly limited last year with injuries. Did we learn anything from last year? Look at this. 15 games together, the big three, 1 game under 500. Malika, I think this backcourt, when you look at Maxey, McCain, Edgecombe, and I think, when they add Quentin Grimes, could be one of the better backcourts in the Eastern Conference. And the Achilles, the front court depth, when you look at it, at Dembona, Andre Drummond, Trendon Watford, Justin Edwards, I do think there's an Achilles with this Philadelphia team outside of the injuries. the front court depth where there could be something that they're going to have to address during the season.
I just remember, and I've said this a couple of times, I went out to the 76ers training camp last season, Brian, and when I went out there, before a game had even been played, what Joel Embiid had told me was, okay, this team is assembled so that I can miss games. Of course not play in only 19, but this is the way that this team was put together. I'm not sure I see what's different from last season to this season. Do you?
No, I think the big concern about Joel Embiid is that he left Paris from getting his gold medal healthy. He was not dealing with any sort of significant knee thing, and when he came to work to begin working up for the season, he wasn't right. And, he searched for a way to deal with that, and, unless that is resolved, in all honesty, we're talking about a middle-of-the-pack team. When Joel Embiid is right, he is one of the biggest weapons offensively the league has ever seen. He elevates them, especially in a conference that is vulnerable. And so as Bontemps said, that health and where Joel Embiid is, not necessarily on August or on October 1st, but where he could be in the back half of the season is one of the most important things we can see in the NBA going into the year.
Health is the number one question. You've got to have more than 15 games with your big three together on the floor. We're going to have more on training camps that are going on around the association right now a little later in the show. But let's get to the WNBA because we have a pair of game threes tomorrow night. Let's dive into the Aces and the Fever. It'll tip off Friday, 7:30 Eastern on ESPN2. Remember, Indiana took game one in this series after outscoring Las Vegas 50-38 in the paint. And then the Aces, they took game two after outscoring the Fever by 14 in the paint. And the matchup to watch, it's the Gamecock fight in the paint between A'ja Wilson and Aaliyah Boston. Wilson has won 9 of the 12 head-to-head matchups between the two in the W, and she leads all players in scoring this postseason. Only Wilson is the only player outscoring Indiana's Kelsey Mitchell. She has been outstanding, right? She leads all players in made threes and is making them at a 43% clip while also ranking 6th in paint point scoring. So now joining us from the site of Game 3 in Indianapolis, it's our WNBA insider, Alexa Philippou. Alexa, with this series now all tied up at 1 game apiece, how are the Aces approaching this all-important Game 3?
Yeah, well, A'ja Wilson said after game two that, look, game one, they didn't come to work. Game two, it was really what they were looking for. They came to work that day and they played Aces basketball. And so they want to be able to bring that same energy into game three tomorrow night. And what that looks like, too, is Becky Hammond had this really cool analogy where she was talking about, games like this, especially in the playoffs, it's like two energies that are competing against each other. And you need to be the one that breaks the other team's energy and the other team's will first. And we saw that in game two with how the Aces really dictated the game on both ends of the floor, using their physicality and aggression to really get things moving on their end and go out to a really big lead. So for them, they also have talked a lot about not trying to skip steps when it comes to the emotional highs and lows of series. They talked about it with the first round series against Seattle, and it came up today as they try to not just be complacent with getting, game two, winning that one game by a lot of points. They know they have to come ready to work for game three.
But where you're sitting right now, it is going to be deafeningly loud tomorrow night, Alexa. Gainbridge Fieldhouse is one of the most difficult places to play in the league, but the Fever, they need to make adjustments. They need to do something different. How can they bounce back in